At 4:34, the answer to your good question about doors. Now, the focus of this story here is on making places more accessible for all. It's a serious topic, especially for those who have a disability.
I was injured in a diving accident in 1990 when I was 14.
That there is Chris Hildebrandt, the executive director for the Rochester Spinal Association. He's been an advocate for those with disabilities for decades after his injury left him paralyzed from the waist down. I talked to Chris to get an answer. Nancy sent me this. I'd love to know why restaurants and even some medical clinics seem to be exempt from having to have blue buttons to open the door. So many of us are dependent upon them, yet they're not there. When you check the Americans with Disabilities Act, you'll see a list of requirements, starting with at least 60% of public entrances at newly built facilities must be accessible to individuals who use a wheelchair or have mobility impairments. But the ADA National Network also says, although automatic doors can offer greater accessibility, they are not required under ADA standards.
It seems like it, to me, that's something that should be in place, to make every place accessible to all. What's the issue with not having those, just in a practical sense of people living day to day?
Yeah, it just comes down to a lot of the access requirements in the Americans with Disabilities Act and other accessibility laws are all compromises. That it would be better to have one of the blue buttons everywhere, but even that doesn't accommodate everybody, because you have people in my network that have no use of their arms and maybe drive their chair with like a sip and puff straw. So they wouldn't be able to press a button, but the motion centered door is something like Wegmans or some of the bigger stores. So that would be better still than the power assisted one.
Hildebrandt told me some of the standards can be vague, mainly defining what's easily openable.
It's particularly challenging because internal doors, there's a lot of requirements about an internal door. It can't have more than like a 5-pound pull force in order to open it. But due to weather conditions, they also don't have any specific requirements on external doors. So external doors can be very heavy to open, and they're also not required to have those buttons.
Having said that, our local governments could always go above and beyond to make their own rules that go further than what's required under the ADA. Hildebrandt says another thing to consider on these compromises with the law, it's easy for a bigger company to pay for blue buttons to open doors, but for a smaller mom and pop shop, it may not be doable financially. That's why they have the middle ground. If you've got some good questions, we've got answers. It is Good Question at WHEC.com.